Snow games. Everyone loves them. And even if the game isn't particularly close, it's always fun to watch them play out, as football is one of the only sports where the weather can drastically affect the outcome of the game and the style of play in which the team decides to go with. Whenever these games are played, we're especially surprised if someone has a good game, since these are obviously unusual ground conditions none of these players are used to, and it's honestly impossible to prepare for, which makes it even more spectacular when they have a great performance. But today, in the spirit of the holiday season, I'm going to be covering some of the greatest performances in the snow in the history of the NFL. Before we get into the video, if you enjoy NFL content like this and you want to see content like this every single week, then subscribe to the channel. And all my socials will be in the description down below, so go check that out as well. My Twitch link is down below also, so make sure you go check that out. And thanks to everyone who has been subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing the videos. Your support means a whole lot. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Brett Favre. Well, when you hear his name now, you may think of a lot of things off the field he has done recently, which I do not support at all. Obviously, it's terrible what he had done and is doing. And as we should all be able to know now, Brett Favre is not the greatest person off the field. But one thing he was able to do on the field is having possibly one of the greatest snow game performances in the history of the NFL. As Favre, in the midst of a blizzard playoff game, had one of his best performances ever, as he threw for 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 5 completions, going 18 of 23 on the day. And very uncharacteristically for Favre, he only threw 0 interceptions. Only threw 0 because he didn't throw any. And he had a QBR of 137.6. He played a nearly flawless game, and to top it all off, it was in the playoffs too. And it was a home game versus Seahawks and Matt Hasselbeck, and they were still able to put up 42 with the snowy conditions. And Favre and the Packers seemed to not miss a step at all from their 13-3 regular season. And even in the snow, they were still able to dominate the competition. And while they did go on to lose one of the coldest games in NFL history in the NFC Championship game versus the Giants, it may have been for the best, not for me as a Patriots fan, but the Giants did end up going on to win the Super Bowl, so for history's sake, I wouldn't change a thing. The next performance is easily the most impressive on this list, as in what was called a freak storm before the game took place, and it was almost an unplayable environment. But clearly to Tom Brady, this meant absolutely nothing, as he put up an insane 380 yards, 6 touchdowns, and was 29 of 34 on the day. And to top it all off, he stopped playing midway through the third quarter, as the Pats were up 52-0 against the Titans. And obviously, Brady and the Patriots had an incredible day. As if I really wanted to, I could have put up multiple players from the Pats on this list. As Moss put up 129 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wes Welker had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Lawrence Maroney had 123 yards and a touchdown. And obviously, New England won the game 59-0. They could have obviously stat padded way more if they wanted to, but you know, Belichick has some class to him, and you know, he pulled most of the starters. But 619 total yards on offense, and such an efficient and dominant game in conditions that are not built for passing at all whatsoever. In a game like this is absolutely legendary. And not to mention, Brady finished the game with a passer rating of 152.8, which is extremely great, almost perfect. And in my eyes, that makes this the greatest snow game performance in NFL history. LeSean MCcoy was a great running back for the Eagles in his time there in the early to mid 2010s. But on this December 8th, 2013 afternoon, many questioned if Shady would be able to have that good of a game in the extreme snowy conditions, as his game is very shifty and it's very side-to-side oriented, and he needs to have good footing to be able to juke defenders out of their shoes and break off big runs, is what we thought, and what many analysts said before the game. Broadcasters even having to take back what they said, because McCoy proved all the doubters wrong, as he was able to have an absurd 217 yards and 2 touchdowns on 29 carries. And even in the snow, he was able to put up 7 yards per carry in a blizzard, which is just absolutely insane. And obviously, Shady did not lose a step at all, having one of the best, if not the best, games of his career and carried the Eagles to a 20-34 win. But something that's crazy about this game is that it actually ended up happening on the same day as this next performance. As at the same time that the Eagles versus Lions game was going on during this Week 14 in the 2013 NFL season, the Vikings had a game versus the Ravens in similar snowy conditions. But the similarities don't end there, as when Adrian Peterson All-Day AP went out the game early, not returning, the Vikings needed someone to step up, and Cordarelle Patterson answered the call as he put up an absurd 147 total yards. And admittedly, the game stats are a little inflated, as Patterson only had 5 receptions, and most of his yards came from a screen pass on 3rd and 10 at the end of the game, which he took 79 yards to the end zone. But this game had to be mentioned, as it's probably the greatest snow game in NFL history, as it ended on a game-winning Ravens drive with 4 seconds remaining. In the fourth quarter alone, there was a combined 42 points scored by the two teams, 36 of those coming in the final 2 minutes alone. And even though the Vikings lost, Patterson did everything in his power to try and win this absolute classic back and forth of a snow game. On December 11, 2016, 6 years to the date of this video coming out, Le'Veon Bell had a monster game in a Snow Bowl versus the Buffalo Bills, where he rushed for 236 yards, 62 receiving yards, and 3 total touchdowns this game. And in my opinion, it is not as great as Brady's to me, as the snow game is built to be a rushing game. And at the end of the game, the Steelers were definitely force-feeding the ball to Bell to try and break a few records and get him over the 1,000-yard rushing mark for the season. But force-feeding or not, these are still incredible numbers, even for a normal condition game. And those Killer Bee Steelers teams of the mid-2010s were special, as Bell, Brown, and Big Ben were all top 5 in their positions year in and year out. And Bell and Brown could have easily been argued to be the best in their positions for a good chunk of those 5 years. And while Bell may be off boxing and doing whatever he is doing now in retirement, during his career, he had one of the best stretchers for a running back in the modern era. And his near 300-yard, 3-touchdown game in a Snow Bowl is one of the best snow game performances ever. And to think that he did all this in the snow, and all of these games were able to go down in the snow, is something astonishing. And hopefully we're able to get more Snow Bowl classics like this in the future, where players absolutely go off. But that's it for this one. The next few weeks, I'm going to try and get out some fun and interesting holiday-type content based around NFL performances like this. So if you're interested in that, and obviously I'm always going to be dropping weekly NFL content, definitely consider subscribing. Anyways, I'm out of here. Enjoy your holiday season. LLE out.